Hello, so this is an introduction to how Fuchs 2 light setup works. This introduction is meant for beginners as well as an update, so if you've already been working in Fuchs, you can skip to the scenes and sequences part. If you're beginning, by now you should have went through a training and got to this point. You've got two computer screens, one with the live control, which is the one with the buttons and faders, and second one with the Lightkey fixture layout, and two MIDI controllers right in front of you. The setup is laid out so that the MIDI is clearly represented by the live control layout. So if you turn a corresponding knob here, it will show up on the MIDI here. So right now I'm turning this one. You can see that the MIDI part that says MIDI mix just has the third one and the second row turning, and so on and so on. The first controller, usually the MIDI mix, is used for basic controls such as adjusting static lights, colors, strobes, masks, speed, fog, and master dimming. The second one is used for actual light scenes, sequences, and flash buttons, as well as custom control. Within the setup, there are three main groups of light fixtures separated onto conventional lights, LED lights, and moving heads. This is also how the layout is set up, more on that in the scenes and sequences part. The setup is highly customizable if you adhere to the rules, such as making a goddamn copy of the Lightkey file. Remember to read the manual and ask if you have any questions. First, scenes and sequences. This controller. The second MIDI controller allows you to control scenes and sequences. These are functional right off the bat once you've loaded the Lightkey setup. So, if you start turning this, you can see that the lights start moving and doing something. You can control three different groups of light fixture scenes separated onto rows. In order, they are conventional lights, LED lights, moving head dimming. Moving heads have dimming separately and positions on this row of buttons. So there is a horizontal order to which these sequences are set up. The first two are usually stage lights, the second ones are floor, and the four ones are combined. You can tell that in the Lightkey as well. With the moving head positions, the first three are static, the next two are stage move, which means they're moving on stage, and the last three are just combined movement of all moving heads. All these scenes have a description of what the fixtures will do on them and are usually very simple 4-second movements. Between the moving head dimmer and the position, we have faders that control Autorun Sequences. These are long sequences, usually around 4 minutes, which are specifically designed for you to be able to do something, have a pause, refill the fog machine. They have an order from left to right, having the softest movements on the left and the hardest on the right. Below all of that, we have flash buttons. They are simple flashes of lights. From the third one onto the next, they just basically flash certain lights as they are described in the Lightkey live control setup. The first two, however, are strobe control, and those function a little differently. More on that in the strobe part. Now, the first control, the main one. So here you can control house lights, which are the LED rods surrounding the balcony and the bottom of the floor. You can control the top ones and the bottom ones separately, and then the two back ones where merge stands usually stand, hence the name. Then there are three movement scenes. These do what they will tell you with all the house lights, and beware, they function only if the static scenes on the left are adjusted, which means that basically if you've got static house lights on fully, you have to sort of turn them down for the scenes to be visible. Remember to readjust that once you're done playing with these. Next, we have the static lights. They are separated onto sort of work scene by stage, conventional scene, and then an LED scene, which will respect the colors that you've selected. And then the same for the floor on the next column. Next up, we've got masks. They're sort of a new thing. With masks, they're basically dimmers set to 0 with the highest priority, therefore they just turn off the lights. First column has two of them shutting down first stage back, then stage front lights, and below that is knob that turns off all white strobes. Then you can mask conventional LED and or moving heads in order, and the last column enables you to turn conventional LED and or moving heads specifically for Autorun Sequences. The Autorun Sequences that are located on the innovation control, they include all lights, and therefore they can come off as a little too much. So you can turn off conventional lights or LEDs within them specifically. Lastly, on these knobs here, we have master dimmer control. These control master dimming of separately all scenes and sequences, all static scenes, and all custom scenes. Use this cautiously as these master dimmer faders go up to 200%. Also beware that they are using a group dimmer. If the group dimmer is set to low but the scenes inside of it are maxed out, they can lower the intensity of scenes running on same fixtures by other groups. Below that, we've got 4 buttons in 2 rows. These control colors, firstly for house lights and secondly for all stage fixtures. There is a base fade of 4 seconds on them. Feel free to adjust that in the group fade timing icon with the mouse. Below these are 4 toxic color faders which tell you the adjustment of speed separately, conventional scenes, LED scenes, moving head scenes. When I tell you that these are dummy faders, meaning that when adjusted by mouse, when you look at them and do this, they will do nothing. Because the MIDI itself is directed onto the speed on the group below. You can see that it's changing the speed, but this little bastard doesn't tell you what value he's at. So we've got dummy faders to tell you where you actually are. You only have percentage, but if you remember that 27% is around 1 speed, then you're practically good, or 28 is actually. Next to that, we've got strobes. These function by using a button which turns the shutter to open or to strobe, and they are separated by a main dimmer, side, and moving head. This may change slightly in the future. And you can tell that these are already selected and have been from the beginning. That is because all the scenes and all the static scenes and everything they use, or most of it, they use only dimmers and don't use shutters. So with fixtures that use shutters or have shutters rather, such as moving heads and some strobes, they will not function if these buttons are not selected. You can deselect these, and there is no way to make them, forcibly all the time selected, or not that I found out yet. But you can turn these on and off with the strobe. So this is shutter open, this is shutter strobe. So right now, how are we using the strobe, as I teased before? So you can turn on the main strobes. They're not really visible in the layout, so we can use the side strobes. You can see them blinking out, but they're not strobing. So to make them strobe, I select strobe on the sides. I can turn it to whatever value, and then I press them, and then you can see that they're strobing. You can use this to blink. You can turn on the strobe while they're doing that and turn it on and off. This will function a little bit differently in the future, maybe, but besides that, you've got moving heads, which turns all the shutters on all moving heads on right now. Right next to that, you've got blind mode. Blind mode is especially useful because what it does is just basically cuts off data, and you can adjust all MIDI as you want it, turn it off, and it will start flashes and movements. Below the blind mode, we've got all fog full. This is a flash button that sends all fog machines to full, and below that we've got fog 1 full, basically, which only sets the first fog machine to full. And so lastly, you got master control here. Now for custom control, you've already got a setup of a second bank on the innovation controller here. You can switch between these by pressing these little tiny 2 buttons on the right. You can see that the factory one is now lit up, and if I press the second one, it lights up the user one. This is set up to this bank fully. This user bank you can use to add new scenes and sequences. As it is all mapped out to MIDI and contains empty sequences, you can simply create a scene and drop it in the fader or button, or you can open the preset palette, which I'll do right now, and locate the custom. It says here, locate the appropriate button and use the sequence or put your scenes inside it. Remember to adjust the timing in the sequence, as it will only roll the second by default if you don't. Remember that if you copy the file, you can do pretty much anything to the live control layout, adjust anything or add or delete any faders, which kind of reminds me that I highly recommend coming in and deleting this, as it is useless for you. Then you got more space with the live layout. Also, you can just go here, put something in the customs bank, on the custom user bank rather. Delete all of this and simply replace this with that, and now you got it on one page and you don't have to worry about scrolling through while you're doing a show. Another thing, you can also use the already preset setups in Lightkey preset palette by simply going inside them. Meaning that you can go into, for example, color, choose one of these colors there, put it instead of the color you've got on the media layout, like so. You can go inside of it and delete the one that's originally there and have the light set up with the pink color. You can also adjust these easily by going into edit. You will have the already preset fixtures selected, and you can then on select the hue that you want appropriately. Beware that with custom adjustments, a lot of the bass scenes use priority. You can see that in Live Controller here by either right-clicking or going to edit and selecting the buttons that you want to adjust. So these priorities will, impede some of your control. So if you want them adjusted, you better go look through this. You can also adjust the MIDI button reaction. Some of these are, as I said, flash. Some of these are toggle. You want toggle instead of flash, you can go here. But with some MIDI controllers, you specifically have to go into the MIDI control as well and adjust the behavior here. By the way, I highly recommend you going through this because this includes some really useful stuff that people might not be aware of. All right. That's it. I hope you enjoy doing lights. Haha. And good night.